Well, good morning, everyone. My name is JC Cortez. I'm the Director of Training and Development here at the Metropolitan Parent Center here at Synergia. A few words about Synergia. We're a multi-service agency based in East Harlem here in Manhattan that's been supporting New Yorkers with disabilities and their families for more than 40 years. We offer a rich source of information and training tailored for parents whose first language may not be English, or who they themselves might have special training needs. We help them participate more effectively in their children's education and development, and we partner with professionals and policymakers to improve all outcomes for children with disabilities. Synergia, which is Spanish for synergy, is one of New York City's 3 federally funded parent centers committed to serving people with disabilities and their families, with an added focus on communities of color and the economically disadvantaged. We're always creating innovative programming, whether it's on sexuality or transitional housing, parenting classes for adults with intellectual disabilities. We have a lot of things going on, but we're happy to help. And yes, so I want to thank you all for being here this morning. And yes, I have a very packed presentation for you. If you have any questions, please ask them in the chat or in the Q&A section. And yes, and if you're joining us via Facebook, please place them in the comments section where I will be monitoring that throughout our presentation. So thank you so much. This is a very packed presentation. Yeah, there's just a lot. But feel free to ask any questions, honestly. And if I haven't answered your question to your satisfaction, please ask it again or clarify it so I can make sure to ask your questions. I also want to thank everybody who submitted questions. I have reviewed them. I hope to get to all of them. And I think most of them are covered in this presentation. So thank you so much for that. Yes, so let me go ahead and share my screen and get this started. If you hear anything in the background, it's probably Harlem. I live in Harlem, and so it's an active time of the morning here. So this is going to be special education, knowing your rights. And yes, this is a part of our Apple Academy curriculum, which is a 7-part series that we offer for parents, currently Spanish-speaking parents. We will offer it in the fall in English in November, starting November 2nd. And this is one of those courses. So yes, if you want more, please consider joining us for a future session of the Apple Academy. I have already mentioned who Synergia is. We also have the Autism Initiative that provides training and support for parents of children with autism. It includes an after-school art program, as well as a social skills program for transitioning young adults, youth. And yes, also here at the Parent Center, we offer special education advocacy assistance with our specialist. If you're having an issue with the Department of Education or your child's school, we're happy to look into it and help you and assist you with that. And like I mentioned, my partners here in the city, my amazing colleagues, Advocates for Children, maybe you've heard of them. They're always suing the pants off of people in the name of more rights for children with special needs and disabilities. Include NYC, an amazing resource hub for tons of information. And then there's us, and then we have our colleagues as well in Long Island, in case you have challenges or issues out in Nassau County. So yes, our agenda for today is going to include special education, the concept, what is it? IDEA, what is that? What does that even mean? You see it everywhere. What does it actually mean? What are the 6 principles of IDEA? So we'll learn about that. IDEA is actually the federal law that really establishes special education in the United States and across the territories. And then what is the special education process? What does that look like? So there's that. We'll really skim the surface on charter schools and private schools. And we'll talk briefly about 504 plans. And then I'll provide you with some great advocacy tips. So yes, we have a lot to cover. And yes, if you have any questions, again, please feel free to ask at any time. I do want to say one thing. I reviewed some of your questions, and many of them are about the IEP. The IEP is like, the IEP can be broken down into so many different ways, and understanding it. And I just want to say, if you're going to do the IEP, if you want to know more about the IEP, I'm doing a webinar next Thursday, specifically on the IEP. So if you want to learn more about the IEP, please, I encourage you to attend that session. This is about special education and the rights around special education. We won't cover the IEP in depth. Like, we'll mention it, but it's not the focus right here. We're looking at the bigger picture, like the bigger process. So I just want to say that before we get started, because I did see several questions about the IEP. But yes, if you have any questions about it, I'll try to answer briefly. So what is special education, right? Special education is actually, it's a collection of services that are designed to meet the unique needs of a child with a disability. And education is supposed to be individually developed to address that child's specific needs. It's not a one size fits all. It's like, actually, you know what? There's a saying when you meet somebody, or you say you know somebody with autism, oh, I know somebody with autism. That doesn't mean you know everybody's needs with autism, because one person with autism has very different needs from another person with autism. And the same is true for any disability. I mean, the same is true for, honestly, any kind of condition. It's not a one size fits all, and we can't do education that way. And certainly not for our children. So yes, special education is supposed to be individually developed. Each child is unique, and special education is supposed to be tailored specifically for that child. And that'll include different supports. Maybe a child needs speech therapy as opposed to occupational therapy. Maybe a child needs more counseling than another. So we have to think about what are the individualized needs. Special education instruction can take place in the classroom, which is typically where it happens, but it can also take place in a home or in a hospital, right? And institutional settings as well, if needed. It's very, we'll talk about when that need is, but it's not limited to a classroom. So we can't think of special education just in a school setting. Who's entitled to special education, right? Well, you can't just simply get special education because you want it or you think your child needs it. There is a process to go through, and we'll talk about that today. But yes, who's entitled to special education? Any student is eligible for special education that might have an impairment or it's in need of special education or related services. We'll talk about what related services means. And that has one of the 13 classifications under IDEA. Again, IDEA, which we're about to talk about, is the federal law that guides special education. So special education here in New York City, just to give you some figures, I love statistics and data, so I'm always trying to bring you something relevant so you can see the scope and the magnitude of what we are working with. In the school year 2018-2019, across the United States, roughly 27% of Latinx and 14% of Black school-age students receive special education services. In New York State, those percentages are bigger, and it's 32% for Latinx and 21% for Black students, respectively. Now, in New York City, if we hone in even more in this beautiful city we love and live in, it's almost twice the national rate, which is quite alarming. 49% of Latino students receive special education, and 28% are receiving, of our Black students are receiving special education. So those are really disconcerting numbers. And we have to think about intersectionality right now, through different lenses, because right now in the pandemic, we haven't been able to provide, well, the Department of Education hasn't been able to provide and identify students with suspected disabilities as well as we were pre-pandemic. So these numbers are probably going to be even worse. And we're starting to see some of those numbers come in, that students haven't been identified through early intervention, or that people haven't been able to receive evaluations to confirm a diagnosis or a suspected diagnosis. So these numbers are probably going to be bigger once we have the data for them. Usually there's like a 2 to 3 year lag in getting the numbers right. So we'll see. But yes, this pandemic has exacerbated everything and made it kind of worse for a lot of people. So yes, and probably why many of you are here today. If you're having challenges right now with the Department of Education. So what is IDEA? What is that? Is it IDEA? Is it IDEA? What is it? IDEA stands for the Individual with Disabilities Education Act. And that act is a federal law that describes special education services for children with disabilities from ages 3 to until they graduate or age out of high school, right? Now that is 0 to when the student ages out. But so if you have early intervention or a child from birth to 3 years old, that's covered as well. It's a different part of the IDEA, but yes, it's still part of it. And IDEA really just ensures that children with disabilities receive a free and appropriate public education. And this phrase is going to be so important throughout our conversation. And if you're supporting a child with a disability, this phrase is going to become very important to you because this is what dictates everything in federal law. It says free and appropriate public education. It doesn't say you're going to be charged. It says it has to be appropriate, which doesn't mean the best necessarily, and it has to be a public education. So you're not entitled, or you don't have the right directly to private education. It doesn't work automatically like that, even though I'm sure many of us would like to see our children in a private school that might offer more services, or that might offer that more one-on-one assistance, right? It's not a right. It's something that has to be justified. So we'll talk about all of that here in a bit. And children who qualify under IDEA are provided with services and accommodations individualized to their needs, right? So there's the academic component, the education, right? We still want to teach students. All students can learn regardless of disability and ability. So what are we going to also provide? We also have to provide support services or related services. You'll hear them called related services as well. And related services can be things like, a paraprofessional, a bus attendant, specialized transportation, right? They ride in an air-conditioned bus with a time limit of 45 minutes. So there's that aspect of it too. And there's the whole gamut of services available that we can never go through all of them in one session. Like it would take 2 hours just to go through all of them. But there are a number of services available. So the most important concept and principle of IDEA, the law, the federal law that dictates special education, is free and appropriate public education. And that provides special education services at the public's expense, so the taxpayer, right? And they're done at appropriate state-approved schools. So state-approved schools being here in New York City, that would be the New York City Department of Education, or public schools if you're outside of New York City. But typically those are going to be your public schools. A student with a disability receives the same educational opportunities as a child without. So, you can't just offer a field trip to the children in general education and not offer it to special education, right? It has to be, it doesn't work that way. You have to offer it to everybody. So the same opportunities are provided to all. And schools must provide students with an education, right? Including the specialized instruction if needed and the related services that's going to prepare a student for employment after high school, if they want to go to school after high school, what that might look like, and also independent living. We want to be able to live independently and enjoy a high quality of life. So what is appropriate, right? That's a big question. And it's a question that many struggle with, and has actually been brought to the Supreme Court's attention within the last 5 years. What is appropriate? So according to IDEA, the law, some of the necessities that schools are obliged to provide include specially designed educations that meet the needs of the student, that addresses not only the academic components, but also functional aspects of the student, behavioral requirements. How can we support this child who is having behavioral issues? It also says that it provides access to the general education curriculum, right? So whatever they're learning in gen ed also needs to be taught to the student. Why wouldn't we teach them the same thing? So yes, so this is being provided according to the instructions within a child's IEP. An IEP is an individualized education program, sometimes plan, but it actually means program. And that is going to be the document that all of the instructions regarding this child's education are included. And they can be, I've seen some very short ones, alarmingly short ones, I'll say, that are maybe like 10 pages. But I've seen some IEPs that are about 40 pages. So they can be uh, thin or thick, and but yes, they're going to provide all of that instruction, all of your concerns that you've expressed, all of the needs of the student. It'll also include information about like the evaluations that have been done. So yes. And lastly, appropriate does not equal best. It's very important to note this. Appropriate does not equal best. It just doesn't. We all want the best for our children, but the law says we are not entitled to what is the best for our children. We're entitled to what is appropriate. So that's an important thing to note, because many will say, "Oh, I want the best for my child. I should be able to have that," and you should. I'm definitely not going to say you shouldn't, but the law says we are only entitled to what's appropriate. So that does not, unfortunately, include the best. How is FAPE achieved? So again, FAPE, free and appropriate public education. FAPE is achievable by providing a child with special services that can include academic needs, right? How do we teach them to read? How do we teach them to do math? How do we teach them history, science? Also behavioral needs, like how do we help this child understand private versus public? How do we help this child understand, that it's not appropriate to touch people? Um, um, how do we teach this child that, like if you're frustrated, there are ways of expressing it as opposed to having a fit, right? So yes, also FAPE can include speech and language services, and it can include instruction modifications. Um, there's a difference between modification and accommodation. Modification is something where you're changing everything, right? That's a modification. So I'm changing the entire exam for this one student, as opposed to an accommodation, which is just like, I'm going to give this child a 15-minute break every 2 hours when they're taking a test. So that's an accommodation. So just to make that clear. So yes, and the goal of FAPE is to make a learning environment more achievable, appropriate, and accessible for a student with a disability. When we go to the second principle, we're talking about LRE, and you might wonder, what is that? LRE is the least restrictive environment. It means that a student who has a disability has the opportunity to learn with non-disabled peers to the greatest extent appropriate, right? So we want to try and include, we want this layer of inclusion. We want this, and we want, you know, general education students to be mixed in with students with disabilities. Why should students with disabilities be separated? It shouldn't just be automatic, right? We're, back in, former days, maybe even back to the 80s, when students with disabilities, they had like their own wing or they had their own separate classroom, and you just put all of them in together because they all had a disability in common without regard to their specific disability. And we've learned so much that doesn't support an individual uh, in how we want them to learn and live and be happy. So yes, so we want to try and mix them together as much as possible. The student should be provided with supplementary aids and services necessary to achieve their goals if they're going to be placed in a gen ed setting, general education. And in New York City, least restrictive environment setting can include the general education classroom, an inclusion classroom, commonly referred to ICT, integrated co-teaching. And that's kind of where we split the class, like almost half and half. It's actually 60-40%. But Yes, and we 60% general education students, 40% with a disability, and then we try and mix them and and provide the necessary supports and services available to them. Buenos dias, good morning. Those of you joining, thank you for the good mornings and the Q&A. Thank you. There is a question here. Let me see. De que vale que yo quiera. So the question here is, what is it worth if I want the best for my child if the services are not being provided? In addition, it concerns me that a parent can ask if they know that they're not getting the services for the student that needs them, and that's something that's different. Is that something that's different? So the question is, if you want the best for your child and you're not getting any services, then are you still, how do you go about this? So if you're not getting any services at all, that's a completely separate issue. And that's something that you need to probably go through in terms of due process, what your rights are about that. We'll briefly talk about that at the end. It might be through a mediation, it might be through an impartial hearing. But yes, obtaining what you need, if your child's not being provided any services at all, it's no longer a matter of if it's the best or not, if it's just like, if we're just getting the basic services. And that's something that requires action. And we will talk about that towards the latter part of this presentation. So thank you for that question. So yes. So in New York City, when we're talking about least restrictive environment, I want to show you here where it goes from least restrictive to most restrictive. So at the bottom of this diagram, we have the least restrictive environment, which is general education. And then as you go up this diagram, you'll see increased intensities of restriction. So I'll walk you through it. At any point on this continuum that we're seeing here in this diagram, you'll see on the blue related services. So related services, kind of like speech therapy, counseling, all of that stuff, all of those services can be provided at any point on this continuum. So you don't have to be in a special education classroom to get speech therapy. You can be in a general education classroom and still get speech therapy. You can be provided all of these things on top of the general education classroom setting. So yes, so in general education, we have the general education, right? No restrictions at all. And then it goes from there to integrated co-teaching, where you have two teachers, one special education, one general education. And then we have special education teacher support services sets in a general education setting as well. So you can have a special education teacher supporting students with special needs or disabilities, right? And again, this is if it's deemed appropriate, right? A certain child might have a higher level of need. And in those cases, maybe we need to have a SETS teacher, a special education teacher in a separate location, in a separate classroom, right? And then we have a special class, right? So we have like a special class, you might think of like a 12 to 1 to 1 setting, right? 12 students, one paraprofessional, one teacher, a special education teacher. And this can depend on like the special class and a special class in a specialized school, right? So we have a specialized school that might have a focus on autism or might focus on certain disability. And in New York City, we have District 75. We have all the geographical districts, 1 through 32. I believe it's 32, last I checked. And then we have District 75. We have special education, and then we have District 79. Special education is going to be for special education that is typically in the green on this continuum. And then we have District 75 for students with higher needs, right? That might be severe autism. It might be a higher medical need, right? Maybe the child needs to have hospitalization and constant medical care throughout the school day, in order to get through the school day, right? So that's where we have more restrictive environments. So we have home and hospital instruction, right? That's typically offered only for a temporary basis or a short-term basis, usually, a month, 2 months, child broke his leg, child is sick, um, child requires hospitalization. So in those cases, you might have home instruction. I want to tell you one big thing about home instruction or hospital instruction is that it's not the same as you would have whenever you are doing a regular school day. So in home and hospital instruction, you're only having a teacher teach between 1 to 3 hours at the most, working one-on-one with the student. And so, yeah, it's not an 8-hour school day, unfortunately. And then have non-public day schools where the student can still go to school during the day. And then we have residential schools, right, where maybe a child needs to actually be institutionalized. And these are very exceptional cases. But there are students that have that high level of need. And so but they have a right to an education as well under the law, right? So yeah, so there are different settings for different levels of need, but you can receive related services throughout the entire time. So yes, there's a question here in the chat. My son received this service in the hospital. Yes, teacher and therapies. Yes, and you can receive those services. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. You can receive these services in a hospital, right? Again, it's not intended for a permanent placement, but it is something temporary and something that is thankfully there, right? So that your child is still getting somewhat of an education throughout the time that they might need that hospital care. So the third principle of IDEA is evaluation. So evaluation, what does that mean? Well, we said that a student has to be eligible for special education. You can't just ask for it because you want it. They have to be eligible. We can't just give things, because we think that the child needs it. We have to evaluate and confirm and assess what the needs are. So that includes gathering information relating to the child and how they can best participate in a general curriculum or general education classroom. So we have to think about that. What tools, what strategies are we going to need for this student in order to support them so that, they can participate? And that's a number of evaluations. I mean, it's not just a doctor doing an evaluation. It might be a social worker asking for your social history, your family history. How was your pregnancy? Did anything happen leading up to your birth? What happened after birth? Is there any trauma around this child? How can we support them in that? Because we want to make sure that we're supporting the holistic development of a child, not just the academic. And I think that's the beautiful thing that we have to appreciate about IDEA is that it's not just focusing on teaching a child how to read and write. It's also teaching a child how to become an independent individual. It's supporting them in other aspects of their person, right? We can't just focus on one thing and neglect the rest. So that's the one thing. So we have to do evaluations, and it might seem like a lot, and it can be a lot. And it's a challenging process. Accepting a diagnosis is not just the day you receive the diagnosis. If you are accepting a diagnosis for life sometimes, because students grow, these children grow up, and their brains are developing, their bodies are growing, nothing stops growing. And there are going to be different needs that come up. Sometimes we hope that it's for the better, sometimes it's not. There are going to be those days where we're disappointed. So we have to just, remember if there's something that we're seeing and we're suspecting that's new, then we need to do an evaluation and see, hey, I noticed this has been happening lately and it seems like it's a pattern. They didn't do this before. Is this something I should be concerned about? So we want to make sure that we're doing evaluations, and as a parent, to provide that feedback, not only to the IEP team that you're working with, having those conversations and that dialogue with teachers, you know, the second person you see your child every day, you know them in and out, you're the best expert in your child. You know what makes them smile, you know what's going to make them upset, you know how to uh, make them calm. You also know what they don't like. My child doesn't like to touch certain fabrics. Excuse me. Um, my child doesn't like to touch certain fabrics. My child doesn't like loud noises. My child doesn't like intense bright lights. So there are things that you're going to know as a parent and be willing to share that information, because remember, at the school, that team that you're working with is there to support you. And often the first person that's going to be the person you're going to connect with, because probably see them, uh, they're probably the person that sees them on the second person that sees them as much as you do is going to be that child's teacher. So think about that teacher as an ally. And sometimes maybe it doesn't work out that way. And we have to be realistic about that too. But try and find an ally and somebody that you can share this feedback with, because it's going to be so important in supporting your child at the end of the day. So yes. And then one last note, you do have to give consent prior to an evaluation. And nobody's going to do an evaluation on your child without your authorization. They can't, it's illegal. And it has to be informed consent. And I want to say a note about informed consent. Informed consent isn't just you signing on the line. Informed consent means that you've had the opportunity to ask questions. Hey, is this the right strategy that we are going to take with my child? Why is this the right strategy? Who is doing this? Who's going to implement this strategy? What are their qualifications? How can I verify? Uh, what else can you tell me about this? All of that is a part of informed consent. All of that should happen before you sign the dotted line. So that's a note about evaluations and consent. There's a question here. How do we know what is the appropriate school setting? My son was placed in a regular public school. They never mentioned anything about District 75. His recommendation was a 12 to 1 class setting, but I don't want him to go to that school at all. Planning to register him in a charter school, but I want to make sure I'm making the right decision. Thank you for that question. And it's good to see you too, Miss Pena Brown. This question is important, and I want to definitely talk about it, because if you're not comfortable with a child's placement in where they're going to be placed, and this is what we call it, academic placement. If you don't like that, you are well within your right to suggest a different setting and to ask questions about why this setting as opposed to another setting. So you definitely should ask about that. Why are we not doing an integrated class as opposed to a 12 to 1 class, right? In your case, specifically. So those are always things that you should be able to ask and get answers to. And if you have a suggestion, or if perhaps your child's neurologist or medical professional has a recommendation, to bring that to the table and have somebody say, I recommend that this child be in a different type of setting, and why. We always have to justify why. It can't just be, this is what I want. We can't just do, I want this just because, or I want this because I heard this is better. It has to be a justification. So whenever you challenge the school on a placement setting, they have to be able to justify it to you why that setting. And if you have a recommendation, they have to take that into account, and they have to do their due diligence and see if maybe those settings are more appropriate. And if not, why. They have to justify. Everything has to be justified. So if you're going to make a suggestion, there has to be a justification. If the school's going to make a suggestion, there has to be a justification. And if you're going to recommend changes, either one of you, there has to be a justification. It can't just be just because we said so, or that's just not appropriate. Okay, that's not appropriate. Tell me why. So that's something that you should consider. The other part of your question well, that wasn't part of the question, but that comes to my attention is enrolling your child in a charter school. There are a number of things that you want to make sure that the charter school can do before you transfer your child. And one of the things you always want to do is make sure that a charter school can provide the same services that your child would receive in a public school. Um, Charter schools don't follow, they are autonomous. They have their own policies and guidelines. So the level of services that you're going to receive, you want to make sure that you're going to receive those in a charter school, because maybe they're not offered in the same way or form that they would be at a public school. So make sure before you make any changes that you do work with the IEP team and find out what's going on with this child's placement before you make an even bigger change in placement by changing them in a school, and maybe find yourself in a situation where you're not going to get even the service, half the services that you are going to get at a public school. So take that into consideration. But thank you for your question. That's a great question. So yes, so why is an evaluation necessary? Evaluations are necessary to determine eligibility, which we just spoke about. And for special education services, an initial evaluation in an area of concern is required, right? We're not just going to spend public funds just because, you know, there has to be an evaluation and a justification. An evaluation is going to carefully examine a child's abilities, their strengths, their needs, and it's going to be evaluated and analyzed by a team. And that's going to be the IEP team. And that includes you, the parents, teachers, and other specialists, a school psychologist, a social worker, a special education teacher, a general education teacher, and maybe an administrator too, right? And then the purpose of the evaluation will be to determine whether a child has a disability or if they require special education instruction or related services. And there's a question here. Do you have to notify the change from one's public school to a charter school? So whenever you're doing notifications, if the school's making any changes, you have to be notified beforehand. There's a thing called prior written notice, and prior written notice has to be done, and it has to be done before anything happens. So you have to authorize any changes, right? Because when you're changing things, you're going to start changing settings, you're going to start changing a lot of things. And yes, the school, if they're initiating it, they have to let you know. If you're more within you're well within your right to change a child's school. You don't have to notify the school. I think it would be beneficial for you to notify the school, so you can support that child in their transition from one school to another. But do you have to provide notification to the school? No, you legally don't, but I would strongly recommend it just to support your child better when it comes to transitioning. Transition can be difficult for any of us, regardless of level of ability or disability. So that would be something that I would consider. And there's a question also, private evaluations, can they be considered in an IEP team meeting? Yes, this is a great question. IEP, private evaluations can always be considered. You can get another word for private evaluation would be an independent evaluation. And you can get an independent evaluation. So for example, the school is going to do a number of tests and evaluations on your child to determine the level of need. And then say you don't like that. Or let's just say you do like the school evaluation, but you want a second opinion, right? We're in a society where we value second opinions. You're well within your right to get a second opinion. And share that with the IEP team. You can share that with them. I would strongly recommend that you always share it with them, and see, like what's going on. If everybody's thinking the same about this child and how to support this child. You can get independent evaluations for free or a scaled low cost through a number of agencies here in New York City. YI, the Child Mind Institute, Synergia does a few for parents in Manhattan with no insurance and no Medicaid. So there are a number of options that you could get for independent evaluations. And yes, they can be considered at an IEPT meeting. Thank you for that question. So yes, are there timelines whenever you have to do these evaluations? Absolutely. IDEA, the federal law, establishes a 60 school day timeline from a parent's consent for evaluation and the determination of eligibility and special needs of the child. Also, an IEP has to be reviewed and developed every year thereafter. So for the first IEP team, for the first IEP, the school has 60 days to, after they get your consent, to do the evaluations and to determine eligibility of special needs, and then to implement the program. And 60 school days, I want to clarify that because people are like, oh, is it only when the school is open? Is that like the same as a work day? Is that the same as a like regular day? Is it a business day? What does that mean? 60 school days means whenever the school district is open, that counts as a day. So typically that's going to be Monday through Friday, right? But let's say you have a holiday. If you have a holiday, if you're coming up on Christmas holidays, December holidays, then maybe the school's going to be closed for a week. So those days will not count. But if the school district is open, and make note, it is the school district, not the school itself. If the school district is doing operating business, then that day counts. So say, for example, right now we're in the middle of summer and people are like, well, schools aren't open. Do those days count? Yeah, they count because you know what? The New York City Department of Education is busy at work throughout the summer. They're open every day. So those days are counting. So if you have something going on right now, that clock is ticking. So yes, that's important to note. Reevaluations. Reevaluations, you can ask for a child to be reevaluated, but it cannot occur more than one time per year unless both you and the school agree that there's a need for it, right? So if you both agree that we need to do another evaluation, then we can do another evaluation more than once per year. Otherwise, it's one time per year. Parents, as a parent, you can request an evaluation at any given moment. So you don't have to wait, for your next IEP team meeting. If you have a concern now, hey, my child is doing this, I saw this, and I am concerned. I think we should do an evaluation to make sure that maybe my child doesn't have another disability or another area of concern. You don't have to wait for an IEP meeting, team meeting. And yes, otherwise, if you don't ask for any evaluations, then what they call a triennial evaluation, one that's done every 3 years, will be done. So we want to make sure, as I said, children are growing, their brains are developing. Brain development doesn't stop until you're about 21. So all of that brain development, that's going to change over 3 years. I mean, we see children, they grow up so fast, and we say that expression because it's true. They grow up so fast, and their needs are evolving, their needs are changing. So there is that. So we have to think about that. So if we don't have any new needs or areas of concern in 3 years, then we'll just do the regular evaluations every 3 years. If we don't see anything new, that's great, that's fine. We'll just do it every 3 years. So we want to make sure that we have like a very fresh idea and understanding of what's going on within a child's development and how the disability has evolved and how it's impacting the child now as opposed to it was 3 years ago. We can all say for certain that our needs 3 years ago are different from some of our needs today. And the same is true for any child, especially with a disability. So yes. So the fourth principle of IDEA is the IEP. And the IEP, as I mentioned earlier, is the Individualized Education Program. It's created by a team of professionals, school professionals, and it also includes you, the parents. It's a legal agreement between you and the school district. That is a legal document. So everything that is in that document has to be adhered to thereafter. Once it's been implemented and you've signed it, that is how that agreement will be done. And yes, and it will describe special education services and the students' needs and their reasons. And it'll be good for 1 year, only 1 year. We always want to update this, right? Because not only does a child's physical, emotional, mental needs, all of those things are changing every year, but also academic goals are changing, living goals are changing. So we want to make sure that the IEP is always addressing the immediate concerns or close to immediate concerns as possible. And it's revised annually or whenever necessary. So it can happen, like say you see, come September, our child is doing great, has all of the supports and services needed to address their disability as it is. And then all of a sudden, like come January, we see something and we're suspect of it. We ask for an evaluation is conducted, and an evaluation ends up confirming another diagnosis. So we might need different supports. So we can revise that IEP once we have the confirmation of what else is happening, or if there are any changes that need to be done. And I put this note in here: parent involvement in placement decisions. Your involvement in the placement of your child is so important. I can't stress that enough. And like our parent that was sharing with us earlier that was concerned about the inappropriate placement, you have a huge voice in this. If you don't agree with that placement, then voice your concerns to the IEP team and tell them why, and tell them what you would suggest. I'm a big proponent of not only identifying an issue or area of concern, but also providing a solution. What solutions, what do you think would be best? Where would you like to see your child, right? So if you have suggestions, bring those to the table always. You might not be, everybody might not be immediately on board, but you can persuade people, and you can introduce the ideas, and you can be on record as saying, I think this would be better, and I know my child best, and I think this is what would be better, and this is why I think it would be that way. Remember, you always want to justify. The fifth principle is parent and student participation. So you're like, where is my student going to participate? Where am I participating in this process? You're going to be participating throughout the entire thing. As a parent, you're going to be participating in evaluations. You're going to be authorizing those evaluations. You're going to be asking information about why this evaluation. You're going to try and understand the evaluation results. You're also going to be a part of the process when it's being determined if your student is eligible for special education services. Also placement decisions, right? And your rights as a parent include your ability to participate in all meetings regarding your child. Also to receive reports and documents on your child's progress and in your native language. So yeah, you should be able to not only receive a report card, but also a progress report. If your child has an IEP, they will have a progress report independently, separately from the report card. So it will say, it'll have like the IEP goals, and this is where we are trying to achieve these goals. And it has to be in your language. These documents they can't be English only. You're trying to make decisions about your child. So it's important that that information is in your language, and it's not just Spanish. The DOE translates everything into at least 9 languages. And then, but if you don't speak one of those 9 languages per se, for example, I mean, there are hundreds of languages, literally, the DOE has to translate them into a language that you can understand. So that's important. And it's no cost to you. That is your right. And yes, nobody can take that away from you. Just as it is your right to have an interpreter present, not somebody off the school team that speaks Spanish, but an independent professional interpreter present, who is fluent in whatever language you speak. That is important. So yes, it's not just grabbing the parent coordinator who happens to speak Spanish and is going to be here to interpret. It has to be somebody who's independent of the school body. So yes, that is your right as well. A student at age 12 will by law be invited to participate in the IEP meetings, and they will be there to only, they're not going to sit in on the whole thing. No, but no, I assure you, no student wants to sit in on an IEP meeting. But the IEP team will want to hear from a student with regard to what they want to do after high school. How do we start planning for transition after high school? What does that look like? What are your goals as a student? Do you want to go immediately to work? Do you want to learn a trade? Do you want to learn, do you want to go to college? College isn't for everybody. Do you want to just live independently? Do you know, like, how can we support you with your goals? So that's when the student will be involved. And that happens in New York City at age 12. And yes, and the assessments will be made for both parents and the student is expected to participate, right? And again, this is only of regard to transition needs. And what I would tell you, and what I would always recommend, is bring your child to every IEP meeting, or at least the one that you have annually. Bring your child and say, this is my child. Look how they're doing. Look at what they're doing now. And show them, show them their strengths. Share with them your concerns. Show them what they did last school year, right? That was really great in their portfolio. Also show them where we're still struggling or areas where, you're still concerned. Those are great moments to start also teaching your child how to advocate for themselves, right? So, how to understand their disability, how to understand what they need, how to tell somebody, I need this in order to do this, because we can't do it for them forever. Unfortunately, we do not live forever. So we have to start teaching them that. And let's see, there's a question here. So the question is about evaluations. Does the school have to provide evaluations in our language? That's a great question. Evaluations, the evaluations themselves that are administered to a student are supposed to be in the student's native language, or the language that the student would best be able to communicate and give results for that evaluation, whatever that language may be. As for the parent getting the evaluation, if you're not getting the evaluation for you, so like say you're the parent, your child's getting this this evaluation, you will not see the evaluation. It does not need to be provided to you in your language, if at all. It's good to see, and there's a lot of things you can see about it, but with the results, that's different. With evaluation results, you are supposed to get at least a summary of the results in your language. I would always encourage for the school to translate all of the evaluation results, and that I would ask for, just so you can understand every detail. But your right is to a summary of those results, because some of the evaluations, like you get the results and the results are 20 pages. So you're supposed to get a summary of what's in there. What I would always ask for more. I will always ask for more. So the sixth and final principle of IDEA, safeguards and due process. It's important for you to understand this. So parent notification, we were talking about prior written notification. You have to be notified of any change, and it has to be in your native language, and it has to be through writing. So you're supposed to receive this. Yes, email is good, but you're also supposed to receive a letter. Typically, you will receive a letter. I know throughout the pandemic, a lot of communication with the Department of Education has been through mass emails. But the standard practice is a letter in writing. Just like we want to have your child's next IEP meeting on May 5th. And it's currently, let's just say for argument's sake right now, it's April 5th. So we want to have this meeting with you a month from today. Please let us know if this time works for you. And that's prior written notification. Or we want to change your son's IEP. We want to decertify their eligibility for special education. You're definitely going to receive prior written notification. So all of that, you're supposed to get notification about any changes, because remember, everything that's in the IEP is a legal document. So it's legally binding. So nobody can make any changes to that document without legal written notification. Parent consent. You're also supposed to give consent to any changes, consent to evaluations, consent to implementing services or changes in services. You have to do that. Nobody can do anything without your signature. Parents' access to educational records. You have access to all your all your children's educational records. That's not just a report card. That's not just their homework. That is like if there are incident reports where there's been behavior issues, if there are discipline reports, you have access to those. If there are any evaluations, you have access to those evaluations. You have access to all of this, and you are well within your right to ask for copies, and you don't have to pay for those copies. There's no 10 cents a page rule here. You have a legal right to those documents if they're about your child, period. Opportunity to present a due process complaint. If you disagree with the Department of Education and they are resisting your efforts, then you have a right to make a complaint. And you can do that. We see the options here on the right-hand side. There's mediation. There's also due process hearings, which is an impartial hearing. And then there's a pendency case for sudden changes that you want to stop any changes. There's also an option that I should add here, and that's filing a state complaint. You can file a state complaint with the state of New York, and the State Department of Education will get involved and rectify that for you really quickly. So yes, and also parent participation in all meetings. You have that right. You were able to participate in any meeting about your child. And if that requires an interpreter, so be it. You're entitled to an interpreter as well. There was a question there was one of the questions that someone submitted for this presentation in advance that was asking a question about how long an impartial hearing takes. An impartial hearing is typically supposed to only last 60 school days. However, in case you haven't seen the news, there's a huge backlog of cases that need to be heard. And so that backlog has pushed how long impartial hearings are lasting. So again, it's supposed to only last 60 school days. However, because of the backlog, the most recent statistics are saying that current impartial hearings are lasting an average of 9 months. 9. That's almost an entire school year to resolve an issue. So they do last long. And the reason is because of the backlog. An impartial hearing officer will probably hear 2 to 3 cases in one day. So that's 2 or 3 hours of 2 to 3 different cases per day. And then they have to reconvene, because whenever you have an impartial hearing, you're going to have the schools present their evidence and their witnesses. The parent will also have the opportunity to present their witnesses and their evidence. And that might take a while, right? So if we want a neuropsychologist, the school psychologist, the school principal, the school teacher, that's 4 witnesses right there. And then we want the parent to testify, 1 parent, 2 parents, then maybe the parent wants their child's neurologist to testify, a social worker to testify, or somebody that's been working with the child to also testify. That's another 4 or 5 witnesses. And we don't have an entire day. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like court, where you have 1 case at a time until it's done. Maybe that'll change one day, but currently that's not the case. So yes. The question in the chat is, where do you make complaints? So complaints can be made, it depends what type of complaint you're talking about. So a mediation request can be initiated with the school, or it can be initiated with the Center for Dispute Resolution Center. And each borough has their own for mediation. If it's an impartial hearing, you'll be filing an impartial hearing office. You'll file a complaint there. If it's a pendency case, you will hire an attorney who will also help you in that. And if you are doing a state complaint, you will file it directly with the state. You can always obtain those forms mostly online nowadays. So that's where you would find them and file them. So yes, procedural safeguards, they're there to ensure that your rights of your children with disabilities are protected. They're also there so that you are always informed with as much information as possible so that you can make decisions about evaluations and placement issues. They're also there to help resolve disagreements between you and the school district. And parental right, you have the right to request, inspect, and review all educational records. Not only those that are relevant to your issue of concern at the time, but any record that exists about your child, you have access to that. The DOE is supposed to comply within 45 days of a request for copies of your educational record. And yes, and copies, like I said, are included. They do not charge you for copies. So yes, you can request amendments at any time if you find any discrepancies. I always tell parents, read your child's IEP. Don't just read it before you authorize it. Read it time and time again. Read it before you authorize it, absolutely. Read it again afterwards before the school year starts. Read it again before your first parent-teacher conference. Read it again before the second parent-teacher conference, so you make sure that you're familiarized not only with what the services are, but what the goals are, what the goals mean. So yeah. And if there are any discrepancies, make sure you note that, because if there are discrepancies in the IEP, if you have some hiccup down the road, you want to be able to say that's incorrect, and I noticed that, and we fixed that, so that later somebody can't say, well, it's like that in the IEP and nothing was ever to correct it. So make sure you take care of that. Notification rights. The school district must provide prior written notification when it proposes or refuses to initiate or change the identification or classification of a disability, the evaluation, the educational placement. Any of these things that are going to change, you have to be notified. So how do you access special education, right? So in New York City, we have the Department of Education, the DOE, and we have special education in community schools, District 75, District 79. I explained to you earlier that we have special education in District 75, and we also have District 79. District 79 is also not a geographic location like District 75. We don't have a special part of the city for District 75. District 75 is across the entire city. So is District 79. District 79 is for students, non-traditional students, typically those students that maybe have a day job and go to school in the evenings, or can't be at school all the time, and they need like a hybrid program, but it's typically an alternative school for non-traditional students. Also for charter schools and non-public funded schools, the New York State Department of Education is going to be the one in charge of special education. And for private schools that do not receive any federal funding, that will be the New York State Department of Education. That would probably be the agency supporting. Now, due process rights. If you don't agree with the IEP team's recommendations, what can I do? You can go to a mediation. A mediation has to be mutually agreed upon. You and the school both agree, like, we have some things we need to work out, and it would just be best if we do it in a mediation. You'll have a mediator who's an independent person. They don't work for the school district. They don't work for you. And they are not going to force any decisions on anybody. If anything, they're going to help everybody identify areas where you both agree that you can where you can provide agreements, and then they're going to try and help you whenever you're talking about disagreements. Like, hey, you guys don't necessarily agree. Would this be something that you would consider? Would this be something you wouldn't consider? Where do you draw the line? Let's try and find a way to come to an agreement. In a mediation, you might get everything you want. You might not get anything, and you might get some. Mediation is a lot quicker than an impartial hearing. Mediation can only take like 3 hours at a time usually. It usually don't last that long, and you can get a lot done because you can talk about everything. And the beauty about mediation is that whatever you share in a mediation stays in a mediation. It doesn't ever leave the room. So you can talk about everything and not worry about it coming, the school's going to use this against me in the future. No, they can't. And just like you can't use whatever you learn in a mediation against the school. So that's the thing about mediation. Impartial hearing, we just discussed it, 9 months on average. It's a very complicated process. Now, it typically requires, it does not require a lawyer, but I would not recommend anybody go through an impartial hearing without one. It is very complex. It is very long. It also requires filing written arguments, legal arguments. The Department of Education in impartial hearings typically has lawyers on staff to defend the Department of Education. And yes, and it's a lengthy process. And the thing about an impartial hearing is that only whatever complaints you made in your original complaint to the impartial hearing office, that's the only thing you can talk about. That's it. You can't just say, oh, and I would like this, and oh yeah, this happened, and like, no, it's only what's in your complaint. That's what we're here to address. Let's get to it. And that's it. And then there's the pendency case. The pendency case is typically when the school wants to make sudden changes in placement or changes in school settings or schools altogether at the last minute, and they want to do it without your consent. And that's what's a pendency case. So the special education process, there's identification. We have to identify the disability. We have to make the referral. What is the recommendation? We have to do the evaluations to determine eligibility. There's the IEP and developing the IEP, and there's placement and services and due process. So the IEP team is going to be you, the parent, the child, if appropriate, right? If they're 12 years old, they'll definitely be invited at least to talk about transition. And then the school team, social workers, teachers, special education teachers, a school psychologist, and also a district representative. And if you are in a charter school or a non-public school, someone from the Committee on Special Education. There's one for every borough. And actually I believe every district too, if I'm not mistaken. But yes, you will have a representative from that. And if your child is under the age of 3 and they're in like preschool, or excuse me, under the age of 5 and they're in preschool, there's also the Committee on Preschool Special Education that can assist, that will assist, I should say, not can, they will in that process. Identification, we have to understand what the concerns are, what are the milestones that your child is not yet reaching, what trouble they're having in school, how is it impacting their ability to learn, right? Okay, there's this issue. How is this impacting their learning? Or maybe even the learning around them, right? For others. So maybe you notice that your child isn't developing certain skills at the certain time. And you realize that, and you realize, oh, actually my son is like struggling in school. I'm not sure what it is. Maybe they're having trouble reading. It could be something as simple as getting glasses. It could be something as providing support for dyslexia. We don't know, but so we have to identify it. So we have to tell somebody, hey, I suspect there might be a disability here. And if anything, we do the evaluation and find out there's not a disability and it's something else. So, so just be prudent. And then before receiving special education, you want to definitely have evaluations done to make sure that everything's been completed and to determine eligibility. So again, recap, evaluations are necessary to discover the reason why the child's having issues or challenges in school. Also, if they're struggling or falling behind at their schoolwork, if they're demonstrating behavior or communication, language issues, to gather information that will help determine their emotional needs, their educational needs, right? Not everything happens at school. So what's happening at home? Mom and dad, it's important for you to share with us what you're seeing at home. So maybe, we can help support them in school. Um, and yeah, um, and also to guide the decision making about appropriate educational programming for a child. Um, so the evaluation needs to also answer these questions. Does the child have a disability that requires the provision of special education or related services? What are the child's specific educational needs? Also, what special education services or related services are going to be appropriate to address these needs? There's a comment here. As a mother, I noticed there is a lack of services. The school sees if the parent is doing the work that what should be done in this case. Every case is distinct. So if there's a lack of services, it's making a complaint to the school. It's either through a mediation. First, I would just email the IEP team and say, there's a lack of services here. This needs to be rectified. If not, we need to discuss compensatory services to make up for these services that have been lost. And if they're not going to do anything, then take them to mediation or an impartial hearing. It's your choice. You always have the choice on which type of complaint you make. Like I walked you through the advantages and disadvantages. You have to make that choice of what type of complaint you want to file, and then go through that process and seek resolution that way. But yes, every case will be distinct, and just like every school and professional. So you have to take that into consideration. So the initial evaluations, all areas of suspected disability, a parent must give informed consent, right? We talked about this. Schools must be informed, must obtain informed parental consent before services are provided. The school district has 60 days, and this is upon written consent from the parent to do the evaluations, right? 60 school days. And once the child has been evaluated, the school district has 30 days to activate, develop, and initiate the IEP. So yes, any request that you're making with the school, you have to do in writing. I mean, you don't have to. I would strongly recommend you to do everything in writing, whether that's an email or a letter. I would definitely do that. Always do everything in writing with the school. And if you're going to make phone calls, I know phone calls can be really convenient. Make sure you're taking good notes. On August 11th, I spoke with JC Cortez, the Director of Training and Development at PS 31, and we spoke about this. He said he would do this, and if I need anything, to contact him in 10 days at this number. That's a good note. Not, I spoke with JC or somebody named JC at PS 31. You need to have like really a good way to understand what happened in that phone call. Also, sources of information. When we're talking about evaluations, it's not just an evaluation, like an evaluation administered by a doctor. There are numbers of input, sources of information, aptitude and achievement test, parental input, what's happening at home, teacher recommendations, what's happening in the classroom, your doctor's report on, physical health, social and cultural backgrounds. If you've practiced a certain religion or faith, let the school know, my child needs kosher food. That's a real need. My child can't be touched on the head. That's a real need. Nobody knows all these things automatically. We have to share them. So we have to make sure we share that information, especially if we want to be respected for our child. Also, adaptive behaviors, what's happening at home. And then information from all sources must be documented. Make sure you're documenting stuff. Keep a record, take pictures, take videos. If you don't know how to describe it, I always tell people, take a video with your phone. The assessment process is going to include a physical examination, a psychoeducational evaluation, maybe classroom observation of a child, social history, and other appropriate assessments. But That's not it. And this isn't a full list, even if as long as it is. It might also include psychological development, speech and language skills, health, hearing, vision test, motor skills, cognitive skills, functional behavioral assessment to understand behavioral issues, language tests. So yeah, school must notify you about evaluations, use the number of tools. There's not one tool that can be used to make one decision. Please know that. There's not just one. Oh, they 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 got a 90 on their IQ test. Therefore, this. No, it doesn't work that way. There have to be a number of other evaluations to make a decision. It's not just one test. And they have to be conducted by a licensed or certified professional in the language of the child or their preferred mode of communication. Parental role to always be part of the evaluation process. You know what the child's, you know the child best. You're the expert, and always provide information on cultural, linguistic, or traditional family practices that might not be identified in an evaluation. A note on classification, classification tips. Classification does not equal diagnosis. Just because your child has ADHD doesn't mean ADHD is going to be the classification on the IEP. So also if your child has multiple disabilities, then we have to pick which disability is impacting the child's learning most. That will be the classification, and it has to be one of the 13 classifications, which will be on the next slide. So yes, classification is best left to professionals, but you are always welcome to provide your input if you disagree with the classification. Always ask for documentation. Just don't ask questions. Challenge the assumptions. Make sure you understand this is your child. Ask for evaluations where you suspect your child is having problems or challenges. And yeah, the classification should accurately describe your student's major challenges. It's not going to list, there's a classification. I'll show you in a second what it is. That's multiple disabilities, right? So we can't identify just one that's challenging this student in particular more than others. It's multiple. And remember, you can always challenge areas of disagreement. These are the 13 classifications: autism, deafness, deaf blindness, emotional disturbance, which has been renamed since I made this presentation. I will update that. Hearing impairment, learning disabilities, multiple disabilities, orthopedic impairments, speech and language impairments, traumatic brain injuries, intellectual disability. So these are the 13. Your child must have a classification if they're school age, meaning K through 12. If they're school age, they have to have one of these. If they're preschool age or an early intervention, it will say typically disability suspected. How can I get an independent evaluation? You can request one through the Department of Education. If you disagree, again, you have to justify why you want an independent evaluation. And they may say yes automatically. They may say no automatically. They're like, well, we don't agree with your decision. You're welcome to get one on your own, or you can maybe go get one for free at YI. Or, but you may have to actually go to an impartial hearing and get an independent evaluation that way. But you will always have to justify it. It may include an evaluation of any skill related to the child's needs. And in order to obtain one, you can obtain one as well if behavior is impacting a child's education and it hasn't been identified. Evaluation tips for parents: request in writing, keep a copy, explain your child's challenges and why an evaluation is needed, express all your concerns about it. If you have any concerns, you are not the bad guy for wanting to know about what you want done for your child. You are not the bad person. Nobody would blame you for asking 200 questions about how you can best support your child. You're trying to do everything that you can with the help of other people, and they're there to assist you. Get written informed consent before any evaluation. Understand what the evaluation is for. Remember, you have the right to request an independent evaluation in writing if you are in disagreement with evaluation results. A quick note on functional behavior assessment. We are running short on time, I just noticed. I will try to be quick, and I will try to also be merciful with my interpreter, who is amazing. And thank you so much. Functional behavior assessment is to look at why a child is behaving in a certain way, whether and what's contributing to it. We call it the ABCs, and it's like what's happening before, the antecedent, what's happening in the moment, that's the actual behavior that is our concern. And then what are the consequences, what's happening after. So it's trying to understand behaviors in and of themselves. A functional behavior assessment is required when a student's behavior is impacting their learning in a negative way or that of students around them. So right, if they're biting somebody, if they're getting bitten, if somebody is hitting somebody, if it's just nobody can control the student, right? We don't understand, right? It's to understand why a behavior. At the end of the day, behavior is just basic human communication. And if a child, for example, doesn't speak, I don't like to use nonverbal. Nonverbal means that they can't communicate, and that's not true. Communication, 70% is body language, 30% comes from the mouth. So if a child can't speak, maybe they don't know the word to say that they're angry. That's why, whenever they're a baby, they grab the baby food and they throw it across the room. I don't want this. I don't like this. But they don't have the words for that. They don't have the vocabulary. So understanding behaviors is just trying to understand what is this child trying to communicate to us that we don't understand yet. So that's what happens. If you have a functional behavior assessment, typically you'll have also a behavior improvement plan. And that will be like, what are the strategies we're going to do to prevent baby from throwing food? Oh, well, it's pea food. Maybe we should try a different type of food. So again, it's just for an example's sake. Obviously, these things aren't that simple, if only, right? But yes, and all of this will be a part of the child's IEP. A word about mediation. Mediation is a voluntary process. The school has to be willing to do it with you. If either one of you is not willing, it's not going to happen, and your next step is an impartial hearing or a state complaint. We talked about the mediator. If you don't want to go for mediation, you can ask for an impartial hearing at any time. And yes, it's a promising alternative. It's not as slow, it's not expensive, and it's not formal. It doesn't cost anything for you. What can you resolve? Identification and classification issues, evaluation issues, recommendation for services, disciplinary action for students with disabilities. You can resolve that too. They are written agreements. They are legally binding. They have timelines. They have who's responsible. They have contingency plans when things don't go according to plan. And a district representative arranges for immediate implementation when mediation agreements. So as soon as you have that mediation, as soon as that agreement is signed by both parties, that goes into the system that day, and the IEP is updated because those services typically begin the next day. And nobody's obligated to agree. You can have discussions about mediation. They're all confidential. The only thing that will not be confidential in a mediation is if there's the revelation of neglect or abuse of a child. And that is just standard across education and across most everything in the United States. In neglect or abuse of a child will always be something that is not protected whenever it's discovered. So if that comes out in a mediation, it will definitely be referred to the appropriate authorities. Also, parties of the mediation process are required to sign a confidentiality pledge so that nothing leaves that room. In fact, if you're taking notes during a mediation, you're asked to surrender your notes and throw them away. it really is serious, that whole confidentiality. Impartial hearing, we kind of talked about it already. There's an impartial hearing officer who is basically the judge. They're not an employee of the Department of Education. There have been some revisions in the last 9 months with regard to who is the impartial hearing officer. And if it's my understanding still, that is something that is going to be litigated in court. But it's going through a city office with the assistance of a city office now. And the reason that's in litigation is because if it's going through a city office, the question is, how is it impartial? Since the Department of Education is a city agency. So that's the legal issue at hand. But yes, the judge will determine what's appropriate. And parents have the option of being represented by an attorney or an advocate. It is not required. It is strongly recommended. Yes. How do you request it? When can you request it rather? Anytime you disagree with a decision or action by the school district related to your child's special education needs, whether they refuse to identify, evaluate, and classify your child, whether they refuse to provide a service or a program, or whether they fail to implement your child's IEP. All must be done in writing to the IEP team, all requests. Other important impartial hearing facts: request must be made within 2 years of a problem being discovered or since it happened. So it's kind of like a statute of limitations, right? You can't just say, oh, 5 years ago, they weren't providing, services to my child. Well, that was 5 years ago. You had 2 years to report that from when you learned it. And if it's services not happening, then I'm sure you knew about it in the moment, or once you discovered it, you had 2 years to resolve it. After 2 years, it's not going to happen. It's going to be very hard. So if you have something that's pending, I strongly advise you to always make those complaints and get that record going. Hearings are held at the same location and time that are convenient to the parent. Under the state education law, a hearing officer has to make a decision within 45 calendar days. That's every day of the week, Sunday through Saturday. And that does not include adjournments, which adjournments will be definitely made if there is an impartial hearing, just to hear everybody's side and everybody's witness and evidence. And yeah, once the decision is made, it's final. And it must be adhered to by both school and parents. Can you appeal? Yes, you can appeal. There's not a new evidence hearing. There's not a new hearing. The state education office will review the transcript. There's a court reporter whenever you're in an impartial hearing, taking notes of every word said by every person there. And that will be what is reviewed. Any appeals can be addressed to the Commissioner of Education. Pendency, we discussed this. It's basically to stop a sudden change in placement of your child. And yes, basically it's saying, stop. This is going to be pending further review. A note on charter schools: the Department of Education is responsible for developing the IEP by the Committee on Special Education. So the Department of Education is going to be the party that's creating and contracting all people involved in the IEP. The charter school may take part in the process. They don't have to. You want them to. I would want them to, but they don't have to. They typically will, though. I will say that. Once an IEP is developed, only the charter school is responsible for carrying out the IEP. So the IEP is made by everybody, all the school officials, and a member of the Committee on Special Education by the Department of Education, but it's up to the charter school to carry out the IEP. They have to do that. So that's why I tell you, if you're going to enroll your child in a charter school, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with charter schools either. But you need to make sure that they're going to offer every service that is available in your child's IEP. And if not, what isn't going to be provided? So yes, so consider that. And then it must be designed to meet your child's needs, not what the charter school can offer, right? It's not about what the charter school can do. Oh, well, we can't do this. We only have one student with autism. We can't bring in, all these therapists. It's like the best we can do is speech. Um, you know, the IEP is always going to be designed for your child's needs. What the charter school can offer you is a different story. But a school should be able to explain to you what they can provide you, and they should be able to do that in writing. If you're going to ask a charter school anything, ask for everything in writing. I mean, charter school, public school, private school, it doesn't matter. If you're making a request before you to make a sudden decision like this, big decision like this, I should say, make sure it's in writing. What is a 504 plan? 504 plan is something in the American with Disabilities, before the American with Disabilities Act, which is a federal anti-discrimination civil rights law that applies to any school that takes federal money. And it says that the school has to provide uh, uh, areas such as education services and testing, extracurricular activities, physical access, discipline for a person with a disability. Basically, you can't discriminate against a person with a disability. And if they need this as a part to exist or to be a part in school, then they should have that. Now, a 504 plan is typically used for medical needs. So if your child needs a nurse, if your child needs to be intubated in order to do feeding, those are typical things you'll see in a 504 plan. Also, you can see, like asthma, students with asthma, they might have, my child has an inhaler. So that might be something. Every school has a 504 plan coordinator. So if you have questions about 504, ask for the 504 plan coordinator. Lastly, and I apologize, we're running over. I am ending it now. You can be a better effective advocate for your child if you read the IEP, read it. It is going to be such an important document. Understand how disability affects your child's ability to learn, get information on the disability, find resources, use parent centers like Synergia, Advocates for Children, Include NYC. We all have information. We're federally funded by the federal government, which means most of what we do for you is free and vetted information. So check that out. Ask questions, always ask questions. You are nobody's burden asking questions for your child, ever. Communicate and collaborate effectively and assertively with the school. You don't have to be aggressive. You can just say, this is the deadline I'm setting for you. I need results by this time, and move on. Organize and keep a written record, so important. And remember, you are not alone in this work. Parent centers are there. There are other parents that have been in your shoes. There are advocates that are working on your behalf, and there are resources everywhere. So thank you so much, everybody. I apologize for going over. I will send you all this presentation. This is our contact information. If you need services from Synergia, please contact our intake department. I will provide you with my information as well. And yes, this is it. So do I have any other questions?